We're here in Chicago at the Art Institute of Chicago, looking at Edward Hopper's Nighthawks.
Rab Jefferson from Rules of Civility said, "Were we, while walking aimlessly in the hours after dusk, to suddenly enter this well-lit diner and sit down on one of 6 empty stools, we could eventually strike up a conversation with any or all of our fellow Nighthawks, and they would have no expectations for how we might act, and they would have no preconceptions of our inclinations."
This painting is very mysterious. It leaves us asking many questions. Who are these people, these other Nighthawks, going about their ordinary lives? Are they alone? What are they doing out so late? Are they a couple? What are we doing on the outside? Or are we on the outside?
These feelings give us this desire to be on the other side, but there's no way to get to it. There's no door. We're almost walking up to this diner from the street that we can't even walk into. We're alone on the outside, blinds pulled down and windows all around us, and no presence of any other human life.
Yeah, we're surrounded by darkness, this warm light on the inside, and not even a doorway to let us in. We are frightened and alone.
The light from the inside is shining in diagonals on the street, creating these shadows for us to walk across. Large, rounded edge of the diner's window is dating it back to the 40s.
Hopper gives us an interesting view of the diner. The perspective is painted at an angle, in a way that makes it look like we're walking up to it.
It gives it this sort of cinematic view, a movie-like, almost, horizontal sort of a frame. It feels like you're on a mission to make it inside and out of the dark night.
Let's try a different perspective. What if we're not the lone person on the outside, but the person inside? What if we're viewing through the eyes of the predator?
Yeah, like a night stalker, watching you. It gives this painting a whole new feeling of exposure.
Suddenly, the painting looks more open. You feel naked and exposed to this potential threat, as you're on the inside and cannot see what they see.
Yeah, I understand. Either way, the feeling is the same. You feel like you're left out, loneliness, and you're out in the cold.
It seems like we're left with more questions than answers on what interactions are actually going on here.
There's this attention to non-specific detail, though. It gives us these sort of familiar feelings, the coffee urns, the register, the familiar bar stools with the red cushions, the napkin dispensers. Hopper shows us this love in this painting. Even though it's non-specific and you can't tell exactly where you are, there are these familiar things that give you comfort.
Did Hopper's life influence the work in any specific way?
Yeah, Hopper lived in Greenwich Village in Lower Manhattan, New York. The brickwork along the outside of the apartments was similar to where he grew up. It gives the painting this sort of sentimental look for Hopper.
What time period is it supposed to be?
It was painted during the Second World War. It's dated back to the Second World War. Many men had left people at home and they were feeling alone and confused without their loved ones.
This explains the sense of late night wandering, this confusion.
Yeah, although it's not particularly specific, you can still get the sense that this is America in the 40s, and there is this dark gray loneliness because of the war. This is a non-specific and not a strictly New York street scene, nor does it say anything about the exact location, but it's more about the mind and letting it go, where it does go when it sees this scene. It isn't necessarily about where, but it's about the feeling of isolation from others during that time.
This is a very American feeling to this painting, although it is non-specific.
Yeah, exactly. It outlines the American experience for some at that time. The soda pop shops, the late nights, the diner, restless souls seeking comfort.
These are all signifiers of the American experience that take us to a specific time period. There is no specific detail that says exactly what is going on inside or even outside. The isolation is the only thing that we are sure of.
Yeah, and for Hopper, who lets you feel your own emotion towards his works, it's okay for that lack of specific detail. I love this quote by Hopper. It sums up what I feel he's done with this work. I believe that the great painters, with their intellect as master, have attempted to force this unwilling medium of paint and canvas into record of their emotions. I find any digression from their larger aim leads me to boredom.
Hopper's not throwing his emotion in our faces. Instead, he is allowing us to have this emotional experience of our own in this painting. You are almost absorbed into it, into the space and into the time period. While, while there, you are able to define your emotions based on your own opinion.
We are now here at the Museo Reina Sofia in Madrid, Spain, standing in front of one of the most famous pieces of artwork of the 20th century, Guernica by Pablo Picasso.
Before fully comprehending this piece, it is crucial to understand the history behind the paint. On April 26, 1937, the small village of Guernica in Spain was attacked by German and Italian warplanes. This was a period when war and fascism were romanticized through media. In Picasso's Guernica, he denunciates the crime of war, mindless cruelty, hatred, the massacre of innocent people, and the inhumane use of technology and weaponry.
Yes, and speaking of weaponry, Picasso says about his artwork, "No, painting is not made to decorate apartments. It is an offensive and defensive weapon against the enemy."
Ironically, Picasso is denouncing the inhumane use of weaponry of man through his own weapon, his paint.
Yeah, Picasso used his paint not only as a weapon, but also as a source of expressing his emotions and frustrations. After hearing news of Guernica through images, newspaper articles, Picasso was outraged, and he reacted immediately by painting this mural. A French art collector, Zuros, says that the first stage of the pictures was conceived in the state of extreme emotional stress.
It seems as though Picasso wanted the viewer to experience this frustration. This frustration rooted out of seeing such brutal images that he could do nothing about. He saw so much corruption in this world and he wanted to make a change.
The black, white, and writing on the painting is representational of the photos and newspaper Picasso saw and read.
Another reason for the strong response to the painting is that a person seems to be able to hear it. Open mouths shriek in pain and terror. Even though there are actually few bodies dead and dying, people seem to lie around everywhere in the chaos, with their eyes open in horror and their mouths crying and suffering. Even the animals, who strike the viewer as being especially defenseless and pinned in against attack, seem to be crying out with their eyes rolling in terror. There's a dual presence of chaos and silence all at once.
It is hard to fully realize the greatness of this image without seeing it in person. It is immense, nearly 20 feet across and 12 feet high. Yet, the size is not what strikes one first, but rather the shock of being in the presence of a world in which emotion itself is vast.
Yeah, we feel very dwarfed and entrapped by such a corrupt world.
Picasso chose not to represent Guernica in a realistic or romantic way. He chose to paint it in a cubistic way with many perspectives.
This idea of many perspectives contributes to the overall theme of looking at situations from every perspective to gain understanding.
Overall, Picasso's Guernica is universal, timeless, and powerful image that speaks to all of humanity about that suffering and devastation of war.